Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. I am now on day 3 or 4 now of COVID, so I look pretty awful right now. I should have, taken a shower before doing this, but it wouldn't have made me feel any better. But today we are doing the third review in the Vinegar Syndrome November 2022 package series. So today we will be talking about a very awesome, very exciting, very explosive, very high octane, every adjective you can think of to replace the word energetic. This is the film from 1994, directed by Ringo Lam, produced by Choi Hawk. This is Burning Paradise. I loved this movie. I said I loved Freeway, but this one I love a whole lot more. There was not a second to rest from beginning to end of this movie. And the entirety of this movie is in one location. We start off right off the bat with government officials from the Qing government in the 1700s, the subtitles say, where they are burning down the Shaolin temple's Buddha statue. And they're knocking it down, hitting it with poles, and it breaks, and it collapses, and the people flee. And while they flee, we are introduced to our main character, who is a traditional folk hero in Chinese folklore, and his name is Fong Sai-yuk. He is in many films. He's in, I think, all of the Shaw Brothers Shaolin films that the booklet talks about. But he and his uncle are fleeing from them in sort of this desert, dusty environment. And dozens, hundreds of horsemen are racing them down. And it is so awesome because eventually they stop running and they just turn to them. And our main character decides to stand them down. And so they run in, and before they can kill him, he kicks a big thing of dirt into one of their faces and jumps up and slashes a guy in half, and his entire upper half of the body falls off the horse. And blood is spurting everywhere. Right off the bat, we are gifted, blessed with probably one of the most blood-soaked fights that I've ever seen in a Golden Harvest film, which I believe is the studio that did this. But this movie, from beginning to end, is just pure fireworks and awesomeness. We get the character of Dao Dao, who is the female interest of the film, and she, I think, could have been better utilized in this movie because she's definitely just a sex object to our characters. Eventually, she becomes more than that to them, but for the first hour or so, she is being touched all over. She is raped by the villain. Our main character, in a very uncomfortable scene that I did not like at all, has to suck the poison out of her feet, so he's sucking on her toes, and it goes on too long, and it's very uncomfortable. And that was really the only issues I had with this movie, was how the characters treated her, because it was pretty sexist and misogynistic, and I did not like it at all. But the restoration for this movie was absolutely fantastic. They had an intro, which I think every Vinegar Syndrome does, where they detailed the restoration and sort of the condition that the film prints were in when they received them before they did the restoration work. And they said that a majority of the issues were addressed, but that to keep an open mind, and I didn't see any issues. There were a few segments where it got a little grainy, but I did not mind at all. This movie was awesome. I loved it. After we meet Dao Dao, our uncle and nephew duo meet Dao Dao in a abandoned shed in the desert. they get captured and they are brought to the Red Lotus Sanctuary or Temple. And as we learn throughout the film, this is more of a prison and slave camp. And it is completely indoors. This is very Day of the Dead like, very also reminiscent of the earlier John Woo films, where a lot of the action is going on very tight streets. And also, the fortress is completely booby-trapped, and it is amazing. There are points where, even just in our first fight in this movie, our main character is fighting his brother, who has now switched sides to the antagonist of the film. And they are fighting, and the main bad guy just keeps shooting random darts and poles and rods at everybody and killing people by just pressing a button on his throne. And it is very visually stunning, this movie. There are a lot of set pieces within this fortress, but for the most part, we are in this very big room that has a giant forge in the center of it that is at the lowest point of the caves. And everybody works on the blacksmithing and making weapons for the bandits and for the sort of people who were given this fortress to sort of just keep an eye on the Shaolin monks. And there's even a scene throughout this movie where we get multiple fights on the bridge, because there's a bridge that goes above everybody of all the slaves, and it goes to the throne of the antagonist, who is looking down on everybody, literally. And it's a really great set piece, because there are multiple levels that the action can happen in. And this is what is totally not irrelevant, but it's very related. This is why one of my favorite video games of all time is Dark Souls, because there's a 3D physicality to the entire setting. You don't just go down a path that you are guided down. You can go up, you can go down into the depths of the world. And in this movie, it's the same way, where you have the surface, and then you have the sort of the second level, or the basement level, where they are running the sort of slaves in their own pens, and they have sex slaves in this movie too. And you have the third level, which is below all of that, and that's where all of the equipment is made. And then we have a lot of caves that are just running around the entire complex. And so you're able to shoot many different scenes and many different fight scenes too. We don't really change location from beginning to end, and it is so good. I really enjoyed it. The rest of the movie is basically them trying to escape, and many booby traps are going off. They almost successfully escape 30 minutes into the movie, and you're thinking, like, where else can this movie go? They just sprinted through the script, it feels like, but they didn't. There was a whole lot more that the writer, who is also Ringo Lam, he wrote and directed this movie, which I'll get into later about why. And you can tell he had a vision. He talked about a lot about how he always wanted to make a wuxia film, which is your typical sort of battle movies where people need to escape a situation that they need to use strength and smarts to get out of. And the ending to this movie is just perfect, in my opinion. There's not really any room to complain, in my opinion. It is very explosive, both figuratively and literally. There's a whole lot of bombs that are hanging around this movie. And our characters use it throughout the film, and then it's used for the final time in a giant blow-up But this entire movie is more of a showcase of the best Hong Kong action, at least martial arts action, that I've seen. And it's very bloody, too. People's eyes are poked out, people's arms are chopped off, the legs are broken, uh, people are scalped, I believe. I'm trying to think if there were any scenes like that, because there are sex slaves that they find later in the film that have been dismembered and have sort of been mummified, I guess would be a way to describe it. They're not wrapped in bandages, but they have been uh, sort of kept preserved, I guess. They've been preserved and sort of what the final moments were, so it's really fucked up. And this entire movie is very claustrophobic. It's just like Day of the Dead, where you start the movie off in the big wide open. We have very long shots in this movie where you can see as far as the eye can see for miles and miles, and then within the first 15 minutes or so, we are taken down into the depths where the hallways are tight. We have only really one big room, but even then, the ceilings are low. And it's really psychologically repressive to watch this movie because humans do not like to be contained. They like to be able to breathe and not be trapped into an enclosure, especially. And this entire movie is claustrophobic, so by the end of the movie, when we get back to the surface, it's a breath of fresh air for us because we haven't seen it since the very first 5 minutes of the movie. And I absolutely love that aspect of this movie. It's why I love these type of cult films, I guess, because the director is using his environment in order to denote sort of the tone of the film. But that's really all I have about the movie itself. My initial reactions is, yeah, I loved it. And now I'm going to discuss the special features, which the first one is with actor Wong Kam Kong, which is a new interview. It's about 18 to 20 minutes or so. He plays the villain of the film. And for the most part, the interview is all about his relationship and collaboration with Ringo Lam, because he was found by Ringo Lam in an audition and acted in his films, John Woo films, and also in Choi Hawk films. So he was very well known by the time they were doing this film. And he said that he was mostly hired on because he was a very skilled calligraphist, which means he was really good at painting and doing sort of big canvases. And there are many scenes in this movie where the villain is using the sex slave's blood and also just the work slave's blood in order to paint his big canvases that he has laying around his sort of commune, sort of outside of the government's jurisdiction, because there are no laws in this place, and he talks about that a lot. But the actor got hired on because he's a very skilled calligraphist, and there's a really great painting in the early parts of the film that turn into sort of what the beginning of the movie is, where it sort of fades from painting to reality. And he painted that, and it's very well done. The use of color is very masterful. It's a very moody painting. But he said that being able to do calligraphy so easily definitely helped, because there was a scene where he had to do a giant canvas painting live on camera. So Ringo Lam came in with 2 cameras and was like, okay, go. We're going to film everything. Just go at it. Take your time. And, there's no other chance from this. You can't paint the same painting twice, is what the actor was saying. And he also did his own stunts in this movie, which is impressive because he is in his 40s by this point, and he was always called the elderly one in the cast and crew because everyone else was in their 20s. And here is this antagonist character who is 46, 47 or so, I think the actor said. And everyone's just like, oh yeah, you don't need to rehearse. You should be, good to go. And he was. And there was even a scene where after while he is raping our main woman, a different woman walks in and sees him, and he's not happy about that. So he jumps off the bed and goes across the room in one jump. And he had to do that stunt by himself. They didn't have any wires, anything. And so what he did is that the first time he did it, he had sandals on, which he was just part of the costume. And he realized after one take, he was like, yeah, the sandals is inhibiting me. I need to get rid of them. So he took them off and nailed it the second take. And it looks very well done. And I'm kind of surprised because throughout this sort of interview, he talks about how there was no rehearsals for any of the action scenes, and that the romance scenes are more rehearsed than the actual fight scenes. And the fight scenes are as crazy as any other Shaw Brothers fight scenes. People are flying around, people are on ropes. It's crazy. The fights in this movie are some of the best, and it's really shocking just how they were able to do that with no rehearsals. He said maybe once or twice they would try it out, just talk to each other, see, okay, I'm going to hit you in the left shoulder, then I'm going to hit you in the stomach, and then next I'm going to slap you upside the head, so on and so forth. And they would just go, and they would nail it in the first take. I'm very impressed by them. But the next interview that was on this release, which is the last interview, this was a pretty light sort of package, in my opinion. And I really hope that 88 Films is not doing another sort of double release with Vinegar Syndrome, because I just rebought the Iceman Kumpf, which I've reviewed on this channel, and I really love the movie, but it sucks having to buy the same movie twice. And I think this release is really good, and I'll get more into that, but that was kind of my first thought when I saw the lacking amounts of special features for this release. And I did not watch or listen to the audio commentary. I didn't really feel like it. I thought I got all of the information that I wanted from the interviews and from the booklet and everything like that. So the next interview was an archival interview with Choi Hawk, who is the director of many, many great action films, namely the Once Upon a Time in China series, which I think I've talked about, but it is, I'm trying to find it right there. There we go. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's that orange one, the yellow box set. But that was just a 4.5 minute interview, unfortunately. But Choi Hawk had a lot to say. It was a very beefy 4.5 minutes. And he described the movie as a video game, which was really funny to me because that's exactly what I was thinking about this movie with the fights, because it feels like a Mortal Kombat movie. I mean, it's much better than the Mortal Kombat movies we have now, although I do have a lot of nostalgia for them because I grew up on them. But there's a lot of sort of stages throughout this movie where our characters fight one-on-one, and somebody will win or something will come out from sort of left field, and it will be something just really bloody happens. And that's sort of why I think I was getting a lot of Mortal Kombat vibes, and why Choi Hawk probably thought this movie was like a video game. And he said that he was asked to direct this movie because it was supposed to be a remake. Excuse me, I have hiccups. It was supposed to be a remake of a 1960s film that was named the same thing, had the same story, everything, but it was lacking in the action. It had a lot of fighting, but it wasn't anything big, and there was no romance elements. So Choi Hawk was approached to do it, and he was like, I'm too busy. I can't do this. But I know this guy named Ringo Lam. I mean, he's been in this kind of film scene for a while. Let's have him do it. He's always wanted to make an action film, and this is the perfect chance for it. And oh my god, he had full, I guess, accolades from, or he had full control of this movie, and he definitely deserves all of the praise. And there's even a point in the essay, in the video essay on this disc, where the narrator talks about how this movie, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. This is so bad. Choi Hart gave it to Ring Alam, and he had basically 100% control on the writing, and this movie is just absolutely mind-blowing. And it's really good because Choi Hawk did not agree with the director at all on the script. They both wanted something different out of this movie, and Choi Hawk finally was like, okay, fine, you have 100% control on this. And there's a specific point from the video essay that I really wanted to mention just now that I forgot to write down, but maybe I'll have to put in the comments. But it's a short interview, but it's a very good one. And the next thing that I looked at was the video essay, which is written and directed by Chris O'Neill, narrated by somebody else. And this is a 20-minute video essay, and it's not really about Burning Paradise. It's all about Ringo Lam's filmography, going from his first film all the way to his most recent one, before his death just a few years ago, I think 2018 maybe. And there's a really great section dedicated to Burning Paradise, but for the most part you get a really good look at, just a good summary look of Ringo Lam's career, which I don't really have anything of, because this was my first Ringo Lam film that I had ever seen, and it's really informational and amazing. Gave a little too many spoilers for his other films, but I really, I'm sure I'll forget them soon, but they also talk about Chow Yun-fat and his career at the time, because he was jumping from the various Ringo Lam movies, John Woo films, and Choi Hawk films at the time. And he really shot to stardom around this time. And I don't think they really talked about whether he had any chances of being in this movie, but they did stop working with each other sometime around this movie's release. So, interesting. The last thing that I want to highlight is the booklet, which is written by Grady Hendrix, who has done a couple of the booklets on these releases. And what they focus on is the lead up to the making of this movie, and mentions that this is movie 2 of the Apocalypse trilogy that Ringo Lam was doing. And that trilogy focuses on submerging the respective genres in bottomless vats of blood, as the author talks about. And that's exactly what this movie is. It's bottomless buckets of blood, and it's awesome. And the other movies in this trilogy are Full Contact, which was released in 1992, and Full Alert, which was 1997. So one of the lines that I really liked in this essay was this one here that reads, "Elder Kung, who is the villain that I've talked about, lurks at the center of Red Lotus Temple like a bloated spider in its web, barely moving except to puff his water pipe. And I really like that because that's exactly what he is. He's a spider. He's constantly weaving all these little webs and forcing people to fight each other for his own enjoyment. He is poisoning all the different sex slaves that we have. He is covering the different women, especially the woman who he jumps across the room to, and actually beheads with his hand. He actually cocoons her with the bed sheets, and the bed sheets are white, so it looks like she's a fly caught in a spider's web. And I really love that line because it really let me fully realize what type of character this is, and it was just absolutely amazing to kind of realize that, or to read that. So, yeah, I would highly recommend this release. This is a really strong Vinegar Syndrome release. It's not many special features on this. One new interview, a new commentary track, and an archival interview and a new video essay. But would I have bought this without the subscription? Probably. I probably also would have been kind of wary of buying it because maybe there's an 88 Films edition coming out soon. We don't know. Last I heard, there's no sort of plans to do this movie by 88 Films, but I don't know because they don't always announce everything they're working on. So we'll have to see. Hopefully, if they do, it's a really big difference because this is not a 4K. This is a Blu-ray. So there's a chance that 88 Films would do the 4K. And I think this movie would be absolutely beautiful in 4K. And I would definitely upgrade to that. So without further ado, thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the night.